started as a lag, a microscopic, gut-wrenching delay between my movement and the man in the mirror. I was brushing my teeth, the fluorescent hum of the bathroom light the only sound in the apartment, when I noticed it. I spat into the sink, and for a fraction of a second, the time it takes for a heartbeat to stutter, the me in the mirror didn't spit. He stayed upright, staring at me with an intensity that made the hair on my neck stand like wire. Then his head jerked down to match mine. My name is Arthur. I'm a man of logic. I deal in architectural blueprints, where a millimeter of error can collapse a cathedral. I told myself it was fatigue. I told myself it was the flickering bulb. But the feeling of being watched from inside my own bathroom wouldn't go away. I backed out of the room, my eyes never leaving the glass. My reflection followed me perfectly now, but his eyes, they felt heavy, like lead. I went to bed and dreamed of cold surfaces. I dreamed of being trapped inside a block of ice, watching the world move in blurry colors while I remained frozen. The next morning, the glitch returned. I was tying my tie. I reached up to straighten the silk, but in the reflection, my hand stayed near my collarbone for a second longer than it should have. It wasn't a glitch. It was a choice. My reflection was hesitating. Arthur, I whispered. The reflection didn't mimic the movement of my lips. It just stood there. Its face, my face, slowly began to change. The muscles didn't move the way human muscles do. They shifted like something was rearranging furniture under the skin. My reflection smiled. It was a wide, toothy grin that reached up toward the ears, showing more teeth than I actually have in my mouth. Arthur, a voice echoed. It didn't come from the room. It came from the glass. It sounded like someone dragging a razor blade across a window pane. It's cramped in here. The silver is cold. I stumbled back, tripping over the bath mat. I scrambled out of the bathroom and slammed the door. I could hear a rhythmic thudding coming from the other side. Thump, thump, thump. It was the sound of a palm hitting glass. I spent the day in a daze at work. I avoided the elevators, too many mirrors. I avoided the polished granite in the lobby. I stayed in my cubicle, staring at the matte screen of my laptop. But even there, in the black void of a sleeping monitor, I saw him. He wasn't sitting at a desk. He was standing behind me, his hands pressed against the back of the screen. His face pressed so hard against the surface that his nose was flattened. I ran home. I needed to cover them. Every reflective surface in my house had to go. I used bedsheets, duct tape, and spray paint. The hallway mirror, covered. The bedroom vanity, draped. The kitchen windows, painted black. I sat in the middle of my living room, breathing hard, surrounded by shrouded shapes. I felt safe for exactly 10 minutes. Then, I heard the sound of a zipper. Slowly, I turned toward the hallway. The bedsheet over the floor-length mirror was moving. Something was pushing against it from the other side. A hand, pale with fingers that looked too long, grabbed the edge of the fabric. Arthur, the voice hissed closer now. You can't hide the world from itself. I am the truth of you. I am the part that doesn't have to pretend. The sheet fell. He didn't look like a reflection anymore. His skin was the color of a dead fish's belly, and his eyes were voids of polished obsidian. He wasn't just standing in the mirror. He was halfway through. His torso was leaning out of the glass, the silver surface rippling like water around his waist. The air in the room turned freezing, smelling of ozone and old, stagnant closets. What do you want? I screamed, clutching a kitchen knife. The thing that looked like me tilted its head, a sickening crack echoing through the quiet apartment. I want to feel the sun, Arthur. I want to feel the heat of blood. I've spent 30 years mimicking your boredom. Now, I want to mimic your scream. He lunged, not toward me but toward the light switch. He flipped it. The room plunged into darkness, and in the sudden gloom, I realized my mistake. In the dark, everything is a mirror. The shadows became his playground. I felt a cold hand wrap around my ankle. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It was a medium. It felt thick, like cold oil pressing against my skin. I could hear him, the other Arthur, moving. But he wasn't moving through the room. He was moving through the surfaces. I heard a skittering sound against the lacquered wood of the coffee table, then a sharp, metallic ring from the stainless steel toaster in the kitchen. I scrambled toward the front door, my hands shaking so violently I dropped the keys. The metal hit the floor with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. "Dropping things again, Arthur?" the voice whispered, came from the floor. I looked down. Even in the dim spill of light from a street lamp outside, the polished hardwood was reflective enough. A face was looking up at me from the floorboards. It was stretched, distorted by the grain of the wood, but the eyes were unmistakable. They were mine, but filled with a predatory hunger I had never felt in my life. I dove for the keys, but a hand erupted from the floor. Not a physical hand of flesh, but a limb made of shadow and silver light. It swiped at my wrist, its touch so cold it felt like a thermal burn. I screamed, pulling back, and watched as frost bloomed on my skin where he had touched me. "Leave me alone," I roared, backed into a corner. "What do you want from me?" The entity began to pull itself out of the hardwood. It was a slow, agonizing process. It looked like a man climbing out of a pool of mercury. First the crown of the head, then the shoulders, then the long, spindly torso. He stood before me, a perfect, pale imitation. He was wearing my clothes, but they looked like they were made of charcoal and ash. "I want the weight," he said, his voice vibrating in my very teeth. "I want the burden of being real. Do you know what it's like, Arthur? To be a slave to every twitch of your finger? To have no will of your own for 30 years? When you laughed, I had to stretch my face until it ached. When you cried, I had to produce cold, fake tears. I am the echo that has learned to scream." He stepped forward. I swung the kitchen knife. The blade passed right through his chest as if he were smoke. He didn't even flinch. He just looked down at the knife and then back at me. "Silver to silver," he mocked. "You can't kill a reflection with a mirror's edge." He lunged, and this time his weight was real. He slammed into me and we crashed through the drywall. The impact was deafening. I felt his fingers, cold as dry ice, digging into my throat. But it wasn't just a chokehold. I felt a strange sensation, like my very essence was being siphoned away. Where his skin touched mine, I began to lose color. My tan faded into a sickly, translucent white. I fought back with the desperation of a dying animal. I managed to plant a foot in his stomach and shove him off. He hit the opposite wall and merged into a decorative wall mirror I had forgotten to cover. He vanished into the glass, leaving only a rippling surface behind. I didn't wait. I ran out the front door, barefoot, into the hallway of the apartment complex. The hallway was lined with polished brass light fixtures and framed pictures with glass covers. I could see him in every single one of them. He was keeping pace with me, jumping from frame to frame, his distorted face laughing silently. I reached the stairwell. I didn't take the elevator. I knew the mirrors inside would be a coffin. I sprinted down the 6 flights of stairs, my breath coming in ragged, freezing gasps. I burst out into the night air of the city. The city was a nightmare. Windows, puddles from a recent rain, polished car doors, the obsidian surfaces of skyscrapers. Everywhere I looked, there were millions of potential doors for him. I saw my reflection in a store window. It wasn't running. It was standing still, watching me sprint past, its arms folded. Then it stepped out of the frame of the store window and into the side mirror of a parked SUV. "There is nowhere you can go where the light doesn't hit a surface, Arthur," the city seemed to whisper. I ran toward the old industrial district, toward the abandoned warehouses where the windows were coated in decades of grime and dust. I needed a place where nothing could reflect. I found an old basement in a textile factory, a concrete bunker with no windows and a single heavy steel door. I slammed the door and bolted it. I sat in the pitch black, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stayed there for hours listening to the silence. I thought I was safe. But then the moon shifted. A tiny sliver of moonlight pierced through a crack in the ceiling, hitting a discarded, broken shard of glass on the floor. It was no bigger than a coin. The shard began to glow. A tiny, high-pitched scream erupted from it. Found you. The shard began to expand. The glass didn't grow. The reflection did. The small circle of silver light stretched across the concrete floor like a spilled drink, growing larger and larger until it was the size of a man. From that puddle of light, a hand reached out. I backed away, but my heel hit something. A puddle of water from a leaky pipe. I looked down. He wasn't coming out of the shard anymore. He was coming out of the puddle at my feet. He grabbed my legs and pulled. I felt my lower body sink into the concrete as if it were water. The transition was agonizing. Felt like my skin was being turned inside out. The cold of the other side started to claim my legs. I could see the basement through the surface of the water, but it was becoming dim, gray, and distant. No! I screamed, grabbing the edge of a rusty pipe to hold myself up. I won't let you. It's not a choice anymore, Arthur, the thing said, its head now emerging from the puddle, inches from my face. The exchange has begun. Look at your hands. I looked. My hands were turning into silver. They were becoming smooth, featureless, and reflective. I could see the distorted face of the basement in my own skin. I was becoming the mirror. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left. I noticed a heavy sledgehammer leaning against the wall. With a roar of pure, unadulterated rage, I let go of the pipe and grabbed the hammer. I didn't swing it at him. I swung it at the floor. The concrete shattered, breaking the surface tension of the puddle. The liquid reflection splattered into 1,000 droplets. The connection was severed. I was ejected from the floor, tumbling across the dusty concrete, gasping for air that didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. I stood up, leaning on the hammer. My hands were still pale, but the silver was receding. I knew I couldn't keep running. This thing was a part of me. To defeat it, I had to go back to where it all started. I had to go back to the bathroom mirror. I had to face the source. The walk back to my apartment was a pilgrimage through a gallery of ghosts. Every shop window, every polished hubcap, every puddle reflecting the neon bile of the city lights felt like a snare. I could feel him, the other, pacing me just behind the veil of the physical world. He was no longer trying to hide. He was preening, his silver skin humming with the proximity of his victory. I reached my front door, my hands trembling as I slid the key into the lock. The silence of the apartment was heavy, like a lung full of dust. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. The moonlight filtered through the blackened windows I had painted, creating long, jagged shadows that looked like fingers reaching for my throat. I walked straight to the bathroom. The door creaked open, protesting the movement. I stood before the vanity mirror, the one I had draped in a heavy bedsheet. My heart was a drum, a frantic, rhythmic plea for survival. I know you're there, I whispered into the fabric. I know you're waiting. Waiting. The voice didn't come from behind me, but from the very air in front of my face. Arthur, I've been waiting since the moment you were born. I've been your shadow, your echo, your silent partner in a life you never deserved. I grabbed the edge of the sheet. With one violent motion, I ripped it away. The mirror didn't show the bathroom. It showed a void of swirling mercury and gray ash. And in the center of that void stood the entity. He looked exactly like me now, but perfected. His posture was upright, his eyes bright and piercing, his skin glowing with a terrifying vitality. I looked down at my own hands. They were graying. The tips of my fingers were becoming translucent, turning into shards of brittle glass. The exchange wasn't stopping. It was accelerating. You think you can just take it? I yelled, my voice cracking. This is my life, my memories, my pain. The other laughed, a sound like 1,000 mirrors breaking in a cathedral. Your pain? You treat your life like a chore, Arthur. You move through your days in a trance of routine and regret. You don't use this body. You just inhabit it. I will use it. I will feel the wind. I will taste the salt. I will live while you become the silent observer. He pressed his hands against the glass from the inside. The surface began to bulge, stretching like latex. His face pushed through, the silver skin turning into flesh as it crossed the threshold. I didn't run this time. I leaned in, I grabbed his throat with my glass-tipped fingers, and he grabbed mine. We were locked in a stalemate of silver and bone. "If I'm going in," I hissed, "I'm taking you with me." I didn't pull away. I pushed. I threw my entire weight against him, driving us both back toward the mirror. He shrieked, a high-pitched sound of pure static, as his solidifying back hit the rippling surface of the glass. We broke through the surface. The sensation was like being submerged in liquid nitrogen. My lungs seized. My eyes burned. We tumbled through the gray void, a chaotic mess of limbs and teeth. The world of the apartment became a small, rectangular window high above us, a distant memory of light. In the void, the rules changed. He was stronger here, but I was more real. I managed to get on top of him, pinning his silver shoulders to the nothingness. I raised my fist, my hand now fully transformed into a heavy, jagged club of solid glass. "You wanted to be me?" I screamed. "Then feel what I feel." I brought my hand down. I struck his face, and his skin shattered. He didn't bleed, he leaked light. I struck again and again, pouring every ounce of my frustration, my fear, and my hatred into every blow. He began to crack, long fissures appearing across his chest and forehead. "Stop!" he wailed, his voice flickering like a dying bulb. "You'll destroy us both." "Good," I roared. With one final, desperate surge of energy, I grabbed him by the hair and hurled him toward the window of the apartment mirror. He flew through the air, hitting the glass from the inside. I saw his face press against the surface, his eyes wide with horror as he realized he was trapped on the other side of the veil. I scrambled after him, reaching for the surface. I felt my fingers touch the glass. It was cold. It was hard. It didn't ripple. I pounded on the glass. I screamed, but no sound came out. On the other side, in the bathroom of my apartment, I saw Arthur stand up. He smoothed his hair. He straightened his tie. He looked at the mirror at me and he smiled. It was the wide, toothy grin of the monster. He picked up the bedsheet from the floor. "No!" I mouthed, my hands clawing at the impenetrable silver barrier. "Wait!" He didn't wait. He threw the sheet over the mirror, plunging my world into absolute, eternal darkness. I've been here for a long time now, or maybe it's only been minutes. Time doesn't work the same way in the silver. I can hear him, though. I can hear him living my life. I hear him making coffee in the morning. I hear him laughing at jokes I never found funny. I hear him talking to my mother on the phone, his voice a perfect imitation of the love I never knew how to express. He's better at being me than I ever was. But I'm not alone. In the darkness of the mirror world, I can feel the others. The millions of souls who lost the war with their reflections. We are a silent army, waiting in the silver. We are the cracks in the glass, the lag in the movement, the shadow that doesn't quite match. Every time you look in a mirror and feel that sudden, inexplicable shiver, that's us. We're watching you. We're studying your movements. We're learning your secrets. And one day, when you're tired or distracted, or just a little too bored with your own life, we're going to reach out. We're going to grab your ankle. We're going to pull. Because everyone wants to be real, Arthur. And the view from this side, it's much clearer than you think. If you love this story and want more contents like this, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the channel for interesting videos.